The laser systems and components industry is having its moment in the sun. And of course, that hasn't escaped the notice of our chief equity strategist and economist, John Blank. John, what is causing this bright spot?
Yeah, look, for Sherry, lasers and their uses in commercial respects go back to, really to the James Bond days of the 60s. This is nothing new, but what we've seen is earnings and stock performance that is new this year. So what we're learning is that laser optics, fiber optic, use of cables is accelerating the value of lasers in commercial use for infotech. And frankly, that's creating enough research budget for it to go spill into healthcare uses of lasers as well. So healthcare and infotech, because the cash flow is finally there for a new generation of laser research, are seeing a build-out, and this is something people should know about.
So as consumers, we all use lasers on some level in our lives, or we're affected by it, that item, component, whatever you want to call it. So is this more of a consumer-centric story, considering all the products lasers are either in or that they affect?
Well, Terry, I'm going to, we'll get to a little later the two groups here. Lumentum Holdings, ticker LITE, it's much more of a commercial internal play. Obviously, ultimately, these products do get in your computers, and on your cell phones and things like that, but you don't buy it directly. But the other group, Qterra, and this other company, Iridex Corporation, are healthcare stocks. These things you do buy the services of this directly. So it's two groups of companies that are happening here. Sometimes the same company has two business units that do healthcare and infotech. Sometimes it's standalone companies that do it.
It seems to me that this whole industry and this whole story seems to strike at the heart of intellectual property issues. Is that the global story here?
Yeah, here's the thing, Terry. For sure it is, because it's fiber optics, it's 5G, it's the whole story of the next generation of computing and communications on the Internet. There's no question this is central to any economy in the world, but the U.S. is leading it. So in previous worlds, the U.S. reached out to Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan for insight into this. Those groups are still linked to us and probably doing some of this work or doing some of this production of lasers. But the new player, obviously, is mainland China. And they have 1.4 billion people. The United States has 300 million. Threw in 110 million from Japan, 60 million from South Korea, and I don't know how many from Taiwan, but let's give it 30. You're still having a market in China that's 2.5, 3 times bigger. So they have national champions in tech. They have huge needs here, and they want to stay ahead. The difference is we have had military alliances and existing relationships with the prior group, South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. We do not have that with mainland China. So the absence of security relationships, in fact, the antagonistic situation of security relationships here, and the fact this country is a 70-year-old communist authoritarian system, present an entirely different set of issues, and these are playing out in intellectual property. So lasers, if you want an example of where the differences are, you would think about how the Chinese are looking at the intellectual property of lasers, the production of lasers, the use of lasers in their own products. All of these issues have to be ironed out, and you can see it's very complicated. But that's what people need to understand here. There really is a global component.
All right, just to underscore, of the countries directly involved, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, all staunch allies of the United States. China is not, however. So there are some real negative implications that carries with it, right?
That's correct. I mean, the bottom line is when you have military relationships, you have an ongoing exchange at a very high level between governments, and a need is there to keep us happy and keep us involved. They need us from military perspectives, and the economic trade relationships follow. With China, you have none of that. This is very different, and this is something. But people say, development moves in chains from Japan to South Korea to Taiwan to China. That is entirely true. And the entrepot is Hong Kong that is all funneled through. But the difference is once you leave Hong Kong, you enter mainland China, and these groups have no security relation. In fact, they have an antagonistic one, and that's the key difference here.
Those population numbers that you mentioned a moment ago kind of reflect the general size of this market. You can get a decent idea of the market size. The industry has seen some recent growth. You expect that to continue?
Yeah, I do. I think, look, you're looking at Infotech, doing 10 to 15% annual growth, and then throw that over a market that's 3 or 4 times the size in China. And you can see why groups like the laser industry have bona fide issues with protecting their property and also getting access to selling it in China. And this, I think, is going to continue regardless of whether there's a recession in the next 2 years or not, because China, this is structural, what one of the economists called structural, and this is structural change that will continue.
So is that part of the U.S. macroeconomic impact here?
No, I don't think so. It's just too small a thing. It's certainly important. It's certainly elevating the stock market as much as we can, but I don't think there's a macroeconomic impact.
For the U.S.?
For the U.S.
Okay, let's take a closer look at those stocks that you mentioned a while ago. Lumentum Holdings Incorporated.
Yeah, Lumentum Holdings is the bigger one in this bunch, ticker LITE. It's got an A for growth, and I've got a market cap of $4.3 billion. This stock trades at about $56 a share. The PEG ratio is 1.25. That's excellent. So this company is what they're doing is making optical communications and commercial lasers. So I talked about them earlier. This is stuff that goes into manufacturing, biotech, graphics, remote sensing, and precision machining. So this is raising that ability to compete on so many levels. Great company out of Milpitas. You need to know about them.
Cutera Inc.
Yeah, Cutera is in this other type of group. This is a Zacks number 2 rank with an A for growth again. But the forward P is 155, Terry. It's crazy. And so the market cap's much smaller, $406 million, this is a tiny little company that makes what's called the Cool Glide family of products for aesthetic applications, permanent hair reduction of all skin types. So vascular lesions, facial telangiectasia, and reticular veins that are appearing on people's skin. So what you're looking here is a healthcare play. Very different situations. And the other one we have here, Iridex, ticker IRIX, is a healthcare stock. Again, this is its laser application, very small penny stock. Probably don't know much about it, but it is coming up pretty nice in our rankings right now.
All right, that's the latest on the laser systems and components industry in the global markets with Chief Equity Strategist and Economist John Blank. And with John, I'm Terry Ruffalo. And by the way, here's something you might be interested in. For a limited time, you're invited to follow the market insights, buys, and sells from all of our recommendation portfolios here at Zacks in real time. And it only costs $1. You can even look in services that are so exclusive they've been closed to new investors. All you need to do is visit Zacks.com/promo, PROMO, for details.
This material is being provided for informational purposes only, and nothing herein constitutes investment, legal, accounting, or tax advice, or a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold a security. Do not act or rely upon the information and advice given in this podcast without seeking the services of competent and professional legal, tax, or accounting counsel. Publication and distribution of this podcast is not intended to create, and the information contained herein does not constitute an attorney-client relationship. No recommendation or advice is being given as to whether any investment or strategy is suitable for a particular investor. It should not be assumed that any investments in securities, companies, sectors, or markets identified and described were or will be profitable. All information is current as of the date herein and is subject to change without notice. Any views or opinions expressed may not reflect those of Zacks Investment Research as a whole.